Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Greetings to everyone east, west, north, south. If you're watching on Univision at HughHewitt.com, hello to you. I'm in the ReliefFactor.com studio, and I am joined by an old friend, former Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, frequent guest on this program in his many years as chief executive of the Badger State, as well as a candidate for president. We go back a long way, and he's got two new jobs that I want to talk with him about. Good morning, Governor. Good to have you back.
Hey, great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I want to thank you for all the Green Bay Packers executives who have rebuilt the Browns into the Super Bowl favorite this year, and you have to deal with the sun setting on the Packers.
It's nice to live in a state where we've got three MVPs, Giannis, Christian Yelich, and soon-to-be renamed MVP, Aaron Rodgers.
You know, when I have your old buddy Mike Gallagher on, he deflects as well. It's a sad thing when a franchise is in decline and their hardcore boosters can't deal with it.
Well, my mom's a Cubs fan. It's the only skeleton in my closet. She's not a Bears fan, but for years, I remember she used to say, "Wait till next year." So hopefully, this isn't your "wait till next year" moment.
No, we're good. I want to ask you about Young America's Foundation, and I want to ask you about the Wilson Center. But first, I got to ask you about the Mueller meltdown. My wife found it so painful she left the room. What did you make of yesterday's Mueller meltdown?
I was traveling, so it was interesting watching people in the airports. I was coming from Colorado and in Denver, and just people would kind of look and pause, and there wasn't the kind of thing you expect where everybody watches and gasps. It was just kind of this, more of the same. It's just a circus. I think people just look at this and they expect the same sort of circus, particularly out of House Democrats. And I think it's actually the only thing worse for them is that they pursued impeachment because the American people, they're thinking about jobs. I think about my brother, who's a food and banquet manager for a hotel. My sister-in-law sells appliances for a retailer. They're concerned about getting their kids ready. One's in high school, one's in junior high. They're concerned about putting food on the table. They're concerned about paying their health care bills. They're not concerned about this sort of stuff. And I think the Democrats didn't help themselves at all yesterday.
The headlines, Dana Milbank. So this is why Mueller didn't want to testify. The Wall Street Journal, the Mueller show is a bust. Dan Balls, the Democrats are now left with one option, the 2020 election. The New York Times, Mueller's labored performance was a departure from his once fabled stamina. It was a fiasco for Democrats yesterday, Governor Walker. I don't really know if they are addicted to this or not, but I know that a broadcast outlet that stays on this is going to lose their audience.
Right. It just wasn't exciting. Like I said, people paused, looked for a few minutes, and then moved on. There was not the kind of national attention that I think at least House Democrats were hoping for. But unfortunately, the predicament they're in is their base demands us. The base demands blood. They want blood on every single issue. They can't move on, and I think that's going to be why Kevin McCarthy is in a good position to become the speaker after the 2020 election.
And you're in a good position to do great work at two places. First of all, the Wilson Center. I just last month had lunch with Jane Harmon, the outgoing chair, and Rob Litwack, who's their executive director, has been my friend for 40 years. I think the president has appointed you to the board, maybe even as chairman. Are you looking forward to working on the Wilson Center, which is bipartisan, high-end, founded by Daniel Patrick Moynihan to serve the idea of serious conversation inside the Beltway that's nonpartisan?
Well, exactly right. I mean, this is something where they help the congressional staff from both Democrat and Republican office, House and Senate. And it's just highly respected. It's ironic that it's the Wilson Center in the Reagan building.
Yep.
It shows that everything about it is above politics in a time where people are just desperately looking for realistic answers, practical answers, not the infighting out there. It's a real honor to be a part of the Wilson Center and to have the appointment from the president and to follow, at least on the board placement, to follow my good friend Fred Nally.
Fred is, of course, a great force behind the Nixon Foundation, of which I'm now the president and CEO, and you will love Litwack. You will love everybody on there. That's great. But it's the other appointment that I wanted to talk to you about at length. Young America's Foundation has been doing great work in America for decades, and I was surprised to see you take its presidency, very pleased to see you take it over. But also you ruled out running for Senate. You ruled out everything for 5 years because you really want to get Young America's Foundation going.
Yeah, I just absolutely owe the organization, which Ron Robinson's done a spectacular job on. You're right, goes all the way back to William F. Buckley, starting Young Americans for Freedom. We now have 500 chapters on campuses across the nation. Not only do we work with college and university students, we're in the high schools. We've got a big conference coming up this next week. The vice president's going to be at Ted Cruz, Rick Scott, all sorts of great folks. We've got youth conferences that go out. One of the things I love, and you know well, is one of the great things that Young America's Foundation has is control of the Reagan Ranch. We've got an excellent education center out in Santa Barbara. It's just spectacular. But I looked and I said, for this organization, which you can find out more at YAF.org, YAF.org. But YAF has been great for many, many decades. But I said to Ron Robinson when he reached out to me a few months back, and I talked to his board and said, love your organization. We've been involved for years. My wife is on the board of governors for the Reagan Ranch itself. We love to be involved, but for me to be interested in taking this, I've got to have the support to say we're going to build off this success. But when nearly 60% of the adults under the age of 30 embrace socialism as viable, and when the same age group, only 24% think that they're exceptionally proud to be Americans, boy, our education system, not only at higher ed, but K through 12 has failed. We've got to dramatically turn things around, and that's what our focus is going to be.
Yeah, it is great to have the Reagan Ranch. I was honored to broadcast from the Reagan Ranch on the 25th anniversary of the Tear Down This Wall speech, and YAF made that possible. And I love their Santa Barbara facility. But the real challenge is what you just articulated, which is to re-educate American youth on the fact that socialism does not work, has never worked, and will never work, and will destroy lives. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. But carrying that message forward, which was Buckley's original engine, a lot has been taken for granted, and we weren't really expecting the rise of the squad or the rise of frankly, ill-educated 18-year-olds who have no idea how the country works.
You're right. Well, there's both the challenge and the opportunity. And I look at this from the standpoint of someone who was 12 the year that Ronald Reagan ran for president in 1980. He not only made me a conservative and a Republican, but an optimist. And so that optimism, to me, at least still reigns out there. When I look at those numbers, I obviously see a tremendous challenge. But when I talk to young people, not only on college campuses, but when I talk to folks like my niece and others on their high school campuses, I realize that a lot of this comes from the fact they just don't know what socialism is, and that they've been bombarded in their high schools and even their junior highs. They certainly get overwhelmed on their college campuses by left-wing professors. I mean, my goodness, I was just in Colorado yesterday, Colorado State. Now they finally backed away from it, but they, for a while, had this committee or task force that was talking about inclusive language. And one of the things they were recommending initially to not include was America and America, because that would somehow be offensive, that somehow that we're implying that American culture was better than others. Well, it is. We should explain to young people why, and why not just Venezuela, but all the way back to the Soviet Union, and why that fell, and all the challenges that come about when the promises of prosperity are met with poverty, when the promises of power to the many becomes power in the hands of the few. Free enterprise has built this country. It has turned things around. And I got to tell you, the most amazing thing is that young people, particularly AOC, earlier this year tweeted that her generation missed out on American prosperity. She could not be more wrong. That is 100% wrong.
Wow.
This generation's had access to more freedom and more opportunity than any generation in the world.
Governor Scott Walker, I got to ask you, at YAF, obviously, it's Young Americans for Freedom, but the greatest thing to happen for conservatism is what Boris Johnson did yesterday. He installed the most conservative government in the free world yesterday in one day. It became the Opportunity Society, One Nation Tory Party of the right. I'm just so thrilled that, I like Liam Fox is the only guy I'm sorry is gone, but I understand the politics. I'm just thrilled with what he did. It's diverse, it's young, it's full of brains, and they're gonna rock the world. Did you agree?
I totally agree, and I think the exciting thing is he doesn't come across as a stodgy Tory, a conservative. He comes up an exciting guy, but he's got the exact principles. It's the same sort of excitement. Well, many of us remember. I remember as a kid with Margaret Thatcher, and in fact, we've got new stickers that just came out yesterday that have one has the Betsy Ross flag in it, but one has Margaret Thatcher's purposely saying, remember that great quote, the problem with socialism is sooner or later you run
out of other people's money.
To spend. That's what Boris Johnson's like. Yeah.
It's a great day to be a conservative. It's great that you're taking over YAF and joining the Wilson Center board. Keep visiting us early and often, Scott Walker. It's always great to talk to you again. When you're in D.C. or in California, if I'm on either coast, let's get together. Come down to the Nixon Library when you're up at the Reagan Ranch, and I'll show you around. Come speak about YAF, and don't be a stranger. Coming right back, America. A pre-market report. I'll give you a little bit more. Kellyanne Conway is going to join me as well about yesterday's fiasco coming up this hour. Jim Talent as well. We got lots ahead. Don't go anywhere. It is the day after the Mueller meltdown, the end of impeachment, and the keening, the wake for impeachment fantasists is really awful to hear. The shrieking going on cable and other places. Stay tuned, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.